Hello, my name is Tylluan. I'm a solitary pagan witch. I'm an author and the founder of the Wolf and Howl Press. This evening's little talk, it may not look like evening, but I assure you it is. This evening's little talk is about the balancing that we do between light and dark, good and evil. It's something each one of us needs to do, and it's become very distorted down the years. So this little talk, I'll try and keep it short, I promise, is designed to try and make it a little clearer what we're aiming for. Everything, I think, in life is about balance. We balance night and day. We need to be awake and we need to sleep. If you don't sleep at all, it can kill you. We need the sun, we need the moon. We need the winter, we need the summer. Everything has its polar opposite. That's what we mean by polarities. And in the same way, there is good and bad, darkness or shadow and light. And really, our entire spiritual path is about learning to balance these, to reconcile them as we go about our daily business. Now, the problem is that the whole idea of black and white, light and dark, has become twisted. People talk about white witches and black witches. You'll still find mention of it in books right well into the 1980s. Oh, that was Audrey, by the way, she's just down there. You still find mention of the black witch, the white witch, right into the 1980s. And it's very confusing in my book because I don't believe there's any such thing. I think you have a witch. A witch is a witch is a witch. What makes us a good witch or a bad witch is really our intention. If we cast more spells designed to harm than for any other purpose, then we can usefully say that person is possibly not very nice to know. But that's the same in everyday life. If you meet someone who's never got a good word to say about anyone, well then you're pretty certain that when your back is turned, they're saying nasty things about you too. That's human life, human existence, the way we are. So that's one thing that's really muddled it, this idea of the black and the white witch. And I would really, really hope we've got well away from that now. It's a witch. That's the best way to describe us. We are witches. And the idea of black and white, no, doesn't really come into it. Another thing that has really muddied the waters, if you like, is that when the early church started formulating its dogma, its teachings, so you have scripture and you also have dogma, the stuff that the church puts together and comes out with as being its own particular teaching. But when they started doing this, one of the things they did was they took over the old pagan sites and turned them into churches, and they did this because people were in the habit of going there. If they had had a pagan site here and the church there, chances are more people would have gone here, at least in the early years, than they did there. If instead they took the pagan site and they put the church on top of it, there was no pagan site where they could go. And if they still wanted to be in that particular vicinity, they would go there anyway, and the church could claim they were going to church. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there was a systematic attempt to demonize a lot of the old deities. Certain deities really did come in for it, you know, Woden, the Anglo-Saxon equivalent of the Norse Odin or Odin, he really did catch it. They just couldn't stand him. The early Anglo-Saxon church had no time for him at all. They really, there was no question of trying to bring him under their wing. They couldn't. So he had to become a kind of demon or devil figure. Others, well, they could, people like the Norse Baldur, they could look at his sacrifice, his death, his murder. they could look at things like that and they could somehow smooth it over and Christianize it and say, oh yes, well, you know, we can make something of this. But by and large, it was a very uncomfortable combination, a very uncomfortable mixture. And this carried forwards into more recent times where the old gods were regarded as demons and devils. People talked about the devil, the old man. In fact, the wild clematis was called the old man's beard. Well, once you get old man, old gal, anything like that, you know it's probably a cover for a much earlier pagan deity. So that's another thing, that paganism, and witchcraft in particular, was so coloured by the way the early church portrayed them, that as there was a revival, possibly a revival or a complete reinvention, some would say, it depends on your point of view, but as there was a growth then of pagan, neo-pagan, reconstructionist, Wicca, witchcraft, pagans, heathens, in the 20th century in particular, it became very difficult. How are we going to describe ourselves? How are we going to distance ourselves from the nasty witches, the nasty people who, you know, hexed their neighbours' cattle or made their children die, or, you know, what have you. And of course, one of the side effects of this was that a lot of them went the other way, and they became all about everything in the garden was wonderful. Everything was bright and sunshine and all butterflies and moonbeams and things like that. It was as much a distortion as everything being dark, chaotic, cursing, you know, prancing around under a full moon and screaming for the devil. Both are equally untrue. The truth, if there is a single thing called truth, is that everything has to balance. There is good and bad in people, and although I like to believe in the innate goodness of people, I am forced to admit there are a lot of very nasty people about. There is good and bad in people, good and bad in situations. There are always good and bad ways of looking at things. We cannot draw a line under something and say, that's good, that's bad. Just can't do it. It's much too complex. And I think until we really start to work on this, until we really begin to develop our own ethics, for want of a better word, our own philosophy, we are always going to find ourselves fighting on the back foot with these highly confident people who want to attack us. You know, you've got to say, well, who is likely to want to attack us? Why can't they just leave us alone? Well, there are people who are very entrenched in their views, in their religious views. They're going to want to attack us because we don't believe the same as they do. And there are also people who have no religious beliefs whatsoever, and they don't see why anybody else should. So they want to attack us and make us out to be gullible fools as well. But the truth is somewhere in the middle, as it often is. The truth is that sometimes we are gullible, sometimes we are fools, sometimes we are led astray by people posing to be things that they are not, posing to be, well, I won't say Messiah because that's the wrong word, but posing to be great spiritual leaders, if you like. Listen to me, follow me, and give me some money while you're at it. That's the usual course of events. I think we have to learn to be a little bit more canny. We have to learn to ask questions, going back to that again. And I think we have to learn also that people who say they're on our side may indeed be quite the opposite. And this is something I think, when I was going back to saying about we have to learn, we have to want to ask questions, we have to be prepared to learn as witches in that other talk. I think there is this element with it where we do need to ask questions. We do need not to be gullible. We must not let ourselves be gullible. We have got to be strong. And we have, above all else, we need to be kind and compassionate. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the questions. And at the end of the day, I would like to think that we are all just doing our best. And on that rather solemn note, I'm going to leave you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Goodbye.